I was called needy for loving my wife and told to give space. So I did exactly that, reclaimed my peace, and watched her freedom turn into loneliness. That single conversation changed everything between us. And looking back, it was the moment I realized how backwards our relationship had become. It started on a regular Wednesday evening. I had picked up her favorite Thai food from that place downtown. She always raved about the one with the ridiculously long line that I waited in for 20 minutes just to surprise her. When I walked through the door, with the familiar aroma filling our living room, I expected at least a smile. Instead, she barely looked up from her phone. "You did not need to do that," she said, scrolling through whatever was more important than acknowledging the effort I just made. I set the containers on the kitchen counter, trying to shake off the sting. I thought it would be nice. We have not had a proper dinner together in weeks. She finally put her phone down, but the look she gave me was not gratitude. It was irritation. "There you go again. There I go again." "What?" "Being all clingy. I had a stressful day at work and you were trying to turn dinner into some big romantic gesture." I stared at her, genuinely confused. Since when was bringing home her favorite food considered clingy? "I am not trying to make it romantic. I am trying to have a conversation with my wife." Over the following days, I noticed this pattern everywhere. When I asked about her day, she would give me one-word answers and change the subject. When I suggested we watch a movie together on Saturday night, she said she would rather scroll through Netflix alone. When I reached for her hand during our morning coffee, she pulled away and said she was not a morning person. The breaking point came the following weekend. I planned what I thought was a simple afternoon, a walk around the neighborhood, maybe stopped by that new coffee shop she had mentioned wanting to try. Nothing elaborate, just us spending time together without distractions. "Do we have to do this right now?" she asked when I suggested it. "Do what?" "Spend time together. You are making it sound like I am rejecting you personally. I just want some space to breathe." That word hung in the air between us. Space. As if I was somehow suffocating her by wanting to be around her. "Space from what exactly?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, even though my patience was wearing thin. "From this," she gestured vaguely. "Between us. From you constantly trying to connect and make everything meaningful. Sometimes I just want to exist without having to engage with someone else's emotional needs." I felt something shift in that moment. Not heartbreak, not anger, just a cold understanding of where I stood and her priorities. "You think wanting to spend time with my wife is having emotional needs? See, you are doing it again, making me the bad guy because I do not want to be glued to your hip every weekend." I took a step back, literally and figuratively. "So, what exactly are you asking for here?" "I am asking you to stop being so needy. Give me some space, let me breathe without feeling like I have to perform for you all the time." The irony was not lost on me that she was calling basic relationship interaction a performance. But fine. If space was what she wanted, space was what she would get. "All right," I said simply. She blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight. "All right, you want space? I understand. Consider it done." From that moment forward, I implemented her request exactly as she had asked. No more surprise dinners. No more questions about her day beyond polite small talk. No more suggestions for activities together. No more reaching for her hand or trying to create those meaningful moments she found so exhausting. If she wanted to breathe without my emotional needs, then that is exactly what I would give her. The change was immediate, and frankly liberating. Instead of planning around her schedule and preferences, I started planning around mine. Instead of investing energy into someone who saw it as clingy behavior, I redirected that energy into things that actually appreciated it. She seemed satisfied with the new arrangement at first. She could scroll through her phone during dinner without feeling guilty about ignoring me. She could make weekend plans without checking if I wanted to join. She had all the space she had requested, and I had something I did not realize I had been missing: peace. But peace, as I was about to learn, looks very different when you are the one who asked for distance versus when you are the one who has been pushed away. The new dynamic between us settled in faster than I expected. Within 1 week, I had completely rewired how I approached our relationship, and the results were eye-opening. My mornings became remarkably efficient. Instead of lingering over coffee, trying to start conversations she clearly did not want, I grabbed my cup, checked my phone, and headed out the door. No more "how did you sleep?" or "what is your day looking like?" Just a simple "see you tonight," if she was even awake when I left. She seemed to appreciate this new routine. No more rolling her eyes when I tried to engage, no more sighs when I asked questions. Just peaceful silence and the freedom she had explicitly requested. I started hitting the gym before work instead of trying to coordinate morning schedules with her. Those 45 minutes on the treadmill became my thinking time. And honestly, I had not realized how much mental energy I had been spending on trying to read her moods and adjust my behavior accordingly. The evenings transformed too, where I used to ask about her day and genuinely listen to her responses. I now offered the same courtesy she had been giving me. Polite acknowledgement followed by a subject change. When she mentioned work stress, I would nod and say, "That sounds tough," before returning to whatever I was doing. Dinner conversations became refreshingly straightforward. Instead of trying to create meaningful dialogue, we would discuss practical matters. Bills that needed paying, weekend errands, basic household logistics. No emotional labor required from either side. The weekend routine changed most dramatically. Saturday mornings used to be our time to plan activities together, debate between farmers market or hiking, discuss which friends to visit or restaurants to try. Now, I would simply announce my plans. I'm going to wash the car and then meet up with some guys from work to watch the game. She never asked to join and I never invited her. This was the space she wanted after all. I rediscovered hobbies I had neglected. That guitar gathering dust in the closet became my evening companion instead of trying to initiate conversations with someone who found my attention suffocating. I signed up for that photography workshop I had been considering for months, but kept putting off because I thought she might want to do something together instead. The most interesting change was how I handled her attempts at casual conversation. When she would make random comments about something she had seen online or mention a co-worker's drama, I would respond with the same energy level she had been giving me for months. Minimal engagement, surface-level responses, quick transitions back to independent activities. "Did you see that crazy story about the restaurant downtown?" she would ask. "No, what happened?" I would respond without looking up from whatever I was doing. She would tell me and I would offer a brief "weird" or "that is crazy" before returning to my task. No follow-up questions, no extended discussion. Just the acknowledgement she had trained me to expect was sufficient. After 2 weeks of this new arrangement, I noticed her starting to linger in the kitchen when I was making breakfast. She would stand by the counter with her coffee, clearly wanting to chat, but I had already established the boundaries she had requested. I would give her a friendly morning and continue with my routine. Sometimes I would catch her watching me when I was reading or working on my laptop, not in an affectionate way, more like she was trying to figure something out. But when our eyes would meet, she would quickly look away and busy herself with something else. The space she had asked for was working exactly as advertised. She had complete freedom to exist without engaging with my emotional needs. She could be as independent as she wanted without feeling pressured to connect or perform for anyone. I found myself genuinely enjoying this new version of our relationship. No more walking on eggshells, wondering if my natural desire to connect with my wife was going to be received as clingy behavior. No more second-guessing whether a simple gesture would be appreciated or resented. The peace was remarkable. I went to bed each night without wondering if I had somehow failed to meet her emotional standards for the day. I woke up each morning without strategizing how to navigate her moods or create positive interactions. But as the 3rd week rolled around, I started noticing small changes in her behavior that suggested maybe all this space was not delivering the satisfaction she had expected. By the 3rd week, the subtle shifts in her behavior became impossible to ignore. The woman who had asked for space was now doing everything possible to occupy mine. It started with small things. She would suddenly develop an interest in whatever I was doing. If I was reading, she would sit nearby and ask what the book was about. When I was working on my laptop, she would comment on how focused I looked. These were not genuine conversations. They felt more like fishing expeditions. "You have been different lately," she said one Thursday evening, while I was reviewing some work documents at the kitchen table. I looked up briefly. Different how? Just quieter, I guess, more distant. I nodded and returned to my papers. "You asked for space. I am giving it to you." She stood there for a moment longer, clearly expecting more elaboration, but I had learned her communication style. Brief responses, minimal emotional investment, quick return to independent activities. The weekend brought more obvious attempts to re-engage. Saturday morning, as I was heading out to the hardware store, she suddenly announced she might come along. "I thought you wanted to clean out the closet today," I reminded her, referencing the plan she had mentioned earlier. "I can do that later. Maybe I will just ride with you. It is pretty boring, just picking up some screws and looking at power tools. Nothing exciting." She shrugged like it did not matter, but I could see the disappointment when I did not enthusiastically invite her along. The old me would have been thrilled she wanted to spend time together. The new me recognized this for what it was, someone testing whether the boundaries they had established were still in place. They were. "Suit yourself," I said, grabbing my keys. "I will be back in an hour." When the first returned, she was sitting in the living room with her laptop closed, clearly waiting for me to come back and tell her about my mundane trip to Home Depot. Instead, I put my purchases away and started working on the loose cabinet hinge I bought the screws to fix. "How was your trip?" she asked from the doorway. "Fine, found what I needed." "What are you fixing?" "Kitchen cabinet. The hinge has been loose for weeks." She watched me work for a few minutes. The old me would have explained the process, maybe asked if she wanted to help, turned it into a bonding experience. The new me just focused on getting the job done efficiently. "I was thinking we could do something tonight," she said casually. "Maybe watch a movie or check out that new Italian place." I paused my work and looked at her. "I have got plans to meet up with the guys to watch the game." "Oh." She tried to hide her surprise. "Since when do you have standing plans on Saturday nights?" "Since I started actually accepting their invitations instead of checking with you first." The hurt that flashed across her face was brief but unmistakable. 3 weeks ago, that expression would have made me immediately cancel my plans and suggest the Italian restaurant. Now, it just reminded me of how many invitations I turned down over the months because I prioritized her comfort over my social life. "You could have asked if I wanted to come," she said, "to watch football with a bunch of guys talking about work and sports. You hate that stuff. I might have been interested." "Since when?" She could not answer that because we both knew the truth. She had never shown interest in my friends or the activities I enjoyed with them. She tolerated them at best, usually making subtle comments about how I spent too much time with people who were not her. Sunday brought the most direct attempt yet. She suggested we go for that walk I proposed weeks earlier, the one that had triggered her request for space in the first place. "Beautiful day for a walk," she said, looking out the window. "Perfect weather it is." I agreed, continuing to read my book. "Want to explore the neighborhood? Maybe check out that coffee shop?" I looked up from my page. "I thought you were not interested in doing things just because I suggested them." "That is not what I said. You said you wanted space to breathe, without feeling like you had to engage with someone else's emotional needs. Going for walks and trying new coffee shops together sounds like exactly the kind of thing you wanted space from." She opened and closed her mouth, clearly realizing she had been caught in her own contradiction. "I just thought it might be nice," she said weakly. "It would have been nice 3 weeks ago when I suggested it. But you made it clear that was not the kind of relationship dynamic you wanted." I returned to my book, and she stood there for another minute before finally walking away. I heard her moving around the kitchen, opening cabinets and rearranging things that did not need to be rearranged. That evening, as I was getting ready to leave for my plans, she made one more attempt. "Are you sure you want to go out tonight? We could order takeout and just hang out at home." "We hang out at home every night. You on your phone, me reading or working on something. That is the hanging out you prefer, remember? I did not mean it like that." "How did you mean it?" She could not answer because she was starting to realize that getting exactly what you ask for is not always what you actually want. The irony was becoming clear to both of us. The space she demanded was working perfectly, but perfect space turned out to feel a lot like loneliness when you are the one sitting in it. The explosion came exactly 1 month after her original request for space. I was in the garage organizing tools when she stormed out, her face flushed with frustration that had clearly been building for days. "We need to talk," she announced, arms crossed, blocking my path to the workbench. I set down the wrench I was holding and gave her my full attention. "All right, what is on my mind? What is on my mind? Really, you are going to act like you do not know what this is about." "I honestly do not. You asked for space. I gave it to you. Everything has been exactly how you wanted it." Her eyes flashed with anger. "No, everything has not been how I wanted it. You have completely checked out of this relationship." I leaned against the workbench, genuinely curious about where this was heading. "How so? How so? You barely talk to me anymore. You make plans without including me. You act like I am a roommate instead of your wife. I am confused. A month ago you told me you needed space because I was being too needy and clingy. You said you wanted to breathe without having to engage with my emotional needs. That is exactly what I have been giving you." "That is not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" "Because you were pretty specific. You said you were tired of me constantly trying to connect and make everything meaningful." She started pacing, clearly frustrated that her own words were being used against her. "I meant I needed some breathing room, not for you to become a completely different person." "Different how?" "I am the same person. I just stopped doing the things you said were suffocating you. You stopped caring. The accusation hung in the air between us. I studied her face, seeing genuine distress, but also recognizing the manipulation that had become so familiar over the months. Let me understand this correctly, I said slowly. When I cared too much, I was needy and clingy. When I care the appropriate amount you requested, I am not caring enough. So what exactly is the right amount of caring that will not result in complaints? Do not turn this around on me with your logic games. I am not turning anything around. I am asking a legitimate question. You set the boundaries. I respected them. And now you are upset about the consequences of those boundaries. She stopped pacing and faced me directly. I never asked you to become cold and distant. I am not cold and distant. I am respectful and considerate. I give you the space you need without making demands on your time or emotional energy. Is not that what you wanted? I wanted you to stop being so intense about everything. Not to stop being interested in me at all. I could not help but smile at the irony. So, you wanted me to be interested, but not too interested. Connected, but not too connected. Caring, but not too caring. Do you see how impossible that is to navigate? Other husbands manage to find the balance. Other husbands have wives who communicate what they actually want, instead of complaining about what they do not want, and then being surprised when their husbands listen. Her face reddened. I should not have to spell out every detail of how to be in a relationship. You are right, you should not. In a healthy relationship, showing interest in your partner and wanting to spend time with them would not be considered character flaws that need to be managed. That is not fair. What is not fair? The fact that I took your complaint seriously and adjusted my behavior accordingly, or the fact that getting what you asked for is not making you as happy as you thought it would? She was quiet for a moment, and I could see her trying to formulate an argument that would make this my fault instead of the natural consequence of her own demands. I just miss how we used to be, she said finally. We used to be me trying to connect with you, and you complaining that I was being needy. Which part of that do you miss exactly? I miss feeling like my husband actually wanted to be around me. I did not want to be around you. You made it clear that want was unwelcome, so now you do not want to be around me anymore. Now I want to be around people who appreciate my company instead of treating it like a burden they have to tolerate. The truth of that statement hit both of us at the same time. She looked shocked that I had said it out loud, and I realized how much clarity the past month had given me about what I had been accepting as normal. Is that really how you see our relationship? She asked quietly. That is how our relationship has been. You complained about my attention when I gave it, and now you are complaining about the lack of attention when I stopped giving it. The common factor in both scenarios is your dissatisfaction with whatever dynamic we have. So, what are you saying? I am saying that maybe the problem is not the amount of space or connection we have. Maybe the problem is that one of us is never satisfied with whatever the other person offers. She stared at me for a long moment, clearly not expecting the conversation to go in this direction. I thought you preferred independence, I added with a slight smile. Is not that what space means? The freedom to exist without having to consider someone else's needs or expectations. Her silence told me everything I needed to know. She had gotten exactly what she had asked for, and now she was learning the difference between independence and loneliness. The week following our garage confrontation brought a completely different version of my wife. Gone was the woman who had rolled her eyes at my attempts to connect. In her place was someone desperately trying to undo the very boundaries she had insisted on creating. It started Monday morning with an elaborate breakfast she prepared before I even woke up. Pancakes, bacon, fresh coffee, the works. She was standing in the kitchen with an expectant smile when I walked in. Morning, I said, pouring myself coffee from the pot she had made. This looks nice. Special occasion? No special occasion. Just thought it would be good to start the week right. I nodded appreciatively and made myself a plate. The old me would have been thrilled by this gesture, reading deep meaning into every pancake. The new me simply enjoyed a good breakfast without attaching emotional significance to it. How is your day looking? She asked, sitting across from me with obvious intent to have a conversation. Pretty standard. Few meetings, project deadline to review. You? Same as usual, but maybe we could do lunch today? That sandwich place near your office. I looked up from my plate. I have got a working lunch with the team today. Rain check. The disappointment on her face was immediate, but she tried to hide it. Of course, maybe dinner then. I could cook something special. Sounds good, I said, finishing my breakfast. Thanks for this. It was excellent. I kissed her forehead the way I always had and headed out the door, leaving her sitting at the table with all that hopeful energy and nowhere to direct it. The pattern continued throughout the week. She would suggest activities. I would politely decline if I had other plans, or accept without the enthusiasm she was clearly hoping for. She would bring up topics for deeper conversation. I would engage briefly before returning to whatever I was doing. By Wednesday, her approach became more direct. "I have been thinking about what you said in the garage," she announced while I was reading in the living room. "Which part? About the balance between connection and space? I think maybe I was not clear about what I needed." I closed my book and gave her my attention. "Okay, what did you need?" "I needed you to give me room to miss you sometimes. When you were always there, always attentive, always planning things for us, I felt like I never had the chance to want your attention because it was constantly available." That is an interesting way to put it. But I did not mean for you to become completely unavailable either. I just wanted some natural ebb and flow instead of constant intensity. "So you wanted me to be less available so you could appreciate it more when I was available?" "Something like that." "Yes." I nodded thoughtfully. "The problem with that logic is it assumes I should manage your feelings by withholding my natural inclination to show interest in my wife. It puts me in the position of having to calculate the right amount of attention that will make you value it without being overwhelmed by it. I do not think it has to be that complicated. It does not have to be complicated at all. People who want to be in relationships show interest in each other. People who find that interest burdensome probably should not be in relationships." She was quiet for a moment. "Are you saying you do not want to be in a relationship with me?" "I am saying I do not want to be in a relationship where my natural behavior towards someone I care about is treated as a problem that needs to be managed." "But what if I have learned from this? What if I handle it differently now?" "Handle what differently?" "Me wanting to spend time with you, me asking about your day, me planning things I think you would enjoy. Those are not problems that need handling. They are normal relationship behaviors. I know that now. Do you? Because a month ago you knew it was suffocating you. What has changed besides experiencing the consequences of getting what you asked for?" She moved closer on the couch, reaching for my hand. I did not pull away, but I did not reciprocate the gesture either. "What has changed is that I realized I took your attention for granted. I thought it would always be there when I wanted it, so I pushed it away when it felt like too much. And now I miss it. I miss you trying to connect with me. I miss feeling like I matter to you. You do matter to me, but I also matter to me. And spending emotional energy on someone who treats that energy as an inconvenience is not sustainable. It would not be an inconvenience anymore." I studied her face, seeing genuine distress, but also recognizing the same pattern that had brought us here. She wanted what she could not have, and rejected what was freely offered. "How do I know that?" I asked. "How do I know that 2 weeks from now you will not be feeling suffocated again and asking for space again?" "Because I understand now what space actually feels like. Space feels like loneliness when you are used to someone else filling the quiet moments for you." She nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I made a mistake. You made a choice. The mistake was assuming I would keep offering what you had already rejected. So, what happens now?" I leaned back, considering the question. "Now you know what it feels like to want connection with someone who has learned to be content without constantly providing it. Interesting reversal, do not you think?" "Are you punishing me?" "I am protecting myself. There is a difference." The tears came fully now, and the old me would have immediately moved to comfort her, would have seen her distress as more important than the months of rejection that had led to this moment. The new me handed her a tissue and waited for her to compose herself. "I love you," she said desperately. "I love you too. But love is not enough when the fundamental dynamic is one person chasing and the other person running until they switch places." She looked at me with something close to panic, finally understanding that getting me back was not going to be as simple as asking for it. The final conversation happened on a Saturday morning 6 weeks after her original request for space. She had been trying harder each day to recreate the connection she had pushed away, but her efforts only highlighted how different I had become during those weeks of learning to value my own peace. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she approached with that determined look I had come to recognize. As her "we need to fix this" expression. "I want to talk about us," she said, settling at the kitchen table with purpose. I poured 2 cups and sat across from her. "I am listening. I have been thinking about everything that has happened, and I realize I created this situation. I pushed you away when you were trying to love me the way you knew how that is accurate, and now I want to find a way back to what we had before." I sipped my coffee, studying her face. What we had before was you being uncomfortable with my attention and me trying to figure out the right amount of interest that would not irritate you. That was not sustainable for either of us. But we were happy sometimes. We were, when you decided my attention was welcome, but happiness that depends on someone else's mood is not really happiness. It is hope with anxiety attached. She reached across the table toward my hand. What if we could build something better? Something where we both feel valued. What would that look like? I do not know exactly, but I know I do not want to lose what we have. I leaned back in my chair. What do we have, really? Because these past 6 weeks have shown me that what I thought we had was mostly me working to maintain a connection with someone who found that work annoying. That is not true, is not it? When I planned things for us, you complained I was being controlling. When I asked about your feelings, you said I was being needy. When I wanted to spend time together, you said I was clingy. The only time you valued those things was after I stopped doing them. People can change. They can. But change that only happens after experiencing consequences is not really change. It is regret. And regret does not usually last once the discomfort fades. She was quiet for a long moment, processing what I had said. So, you are giving up on us? I am accepting what you taught me about us. You taught me that my natural way of loving you was a problem. You taught me that wanting connection with my wife was neediness. You taught me that your comfort was more important than our relationship. I was wrong, maybe. But being wrong does not undo the months of making me feel like there was something defective about wanting to be close to the person I married. So what happens now? I finished my coffee and looked at her directly. Now we both know who we really are. You are someone who wants things most when they are not readily available. And I am someone who has learned to find peace without constantly trying to earn someone else's affection. That sounds like you have already made your decision. I have, but not in the way you think. She looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, I have decided to stop participating in a dynamic where someone has to chase and someone has to run. If we are going to be together, we are going to be two people who both want to be here, not one person working to convince the other that the relationship is worth their attention. I want to be here. You want to be here now because you experienced what it feels like when I am not chasing you anymore. But wanting something because you cannot have it is not the same as wanting it because you value it. How can I prove that I value it? You cannot prove it. You can only live it. But proving and living are two different things. She stood up and began pacing, clearly frustrated that this was not going the way she had planned. So, what are you saying? That it is too late? That there is no way to fix this? I stood as well, walking to the window that overlooked our backyard. I am saying that what needed fixing was the idea that love is something you have to earn through the right balance of attention and distance. Real love does not require that kind of calculation. Real love. I turned back to face her. Real love is wanting to know about each other's days without it being considered neediness. Real love is planning things together without it being called controlling. Real love is showing interest in each other without having to worry about whether that interest is welcome. Today I can do that. Can you? Because doing that means accepting attention gracefully, even when you are not in the mood for it. It means appreciating effort even when it is not perfectly timed. It means recognizing that someone trying to connect with you is a gift, not a burden. She nodded eagerly. I understand now. Understanding and living are different things. Understanding is intellectual. Living is daily choice. I moved toward the kitchen counter and turned to face her one final time. Here is what I have learned about myself these past 6 weeks. I do not need someone to complete me or make me happy. I can create my own peace, pursue my own interests, maintain my own friendships. I like who I am when I am not constantly adjusting my behavior to manage someone else's comfort level. That sounds lonely. It is not lonely, it is free. And that freedom has shown me what I actually want in a partner, which is someone who enhances my life, instead of requiring me to diminish myself. Someone whose presence adds joy rather than anxiety about whether I am being the right version of myself today. She was crying now, but they were not the manipulative tears I had learned to recognize. These were tears of genuine understanding. I ruined this, did not I? You taught both of us something important. You taught me that I do not have to accept being treated like my love is an inconvenience. And you learned what it feels like when that love gets redirected elsewhere. So, this is it. We are done. I looked at this woman I had spent years trying to please, trying to love in ways that would not overwhelm her, trying to be enough without being too much. We are done with the version of this relationship where one person holds the power and the other person tries to earn it. Whether we are done with each other depends on whether you can love someone without needing to control how much they are allowed to love you back. She wiped her eyes and looked at me with something I had not seen before. Respect mixed with loss. I do not know if I can be that person. Then you have your answer. The house fell quiet except for the sound of her crying softly. But this time, her tears were not my responsibility to fix. This time, they were the natural consequence of choices she had made and lessons she had learned. I grabbed my keys from the counter. I'm going to spend the day with people who appreciate my company. When I get back tonight, we can talk about what comes next. As I walked toward the door, I felt something I had not felt in months. Complete clarity about my own worth and complete peace with whatever came next. Her space had become loneliness, just as I predicted. But my independence had become something much more valuable. Self-respect that no longer depended on her approval. Our story has come to an end. If you have made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I have selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you will enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I will be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.